Nerd Lag Game Club.
Welcome to the Nerd Lag Game Club podcast, the podcast that gives us a chance to step back and play a game with friends. I'm Corey, and I'm joined with three party members today. Lauren.
Hey.
Tonsa.
Forgot to look up a new saying for hello. Sorry.
Dan.
Hello.
In this episode of the Game Club, we're entering the world that only knows tragedy and playing 2017's What Remains of Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch was developed by Giant Sparrow and published by Annapurna Interactive. Giant Sparrow has developed only this game and The Unfinished Swan and are currently working on something, but it hasn't been announced yet. This was our in-between pick for the month of November, so Lauren, can you tell us what type of game What Remains of Edith Finch is?
It's definitely pretty much an all-story game. I don't know the exact, what is it?
They kind of call them walking simulators.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way to put it. I don't really know how else to describe.
It's similar to Firewatch and my early interaction with a game like this is Gone Home and stuff, those narrative driven walking simulators. It's linear, so you can't really get too far off the path because it's just telling you a story.
I know.
All right, well, before we get into the game, I want to give the spoiler warning. So if you want to play this game, then I recommend playing it before listening. With that being said, who wants to begin the story of What Remains of Edith Finch? I guess disclaimer, usually we talk about our favorite parts of the game that we're playing, but we're going to go kind of as a walkthrough through the story because it's pretty short and basically anything we mention is going to be spoilers, so we're just going to go step by step. So the story starts as Edith. Who wants to start the first little interaction?
I nominate Dan.
Okay, I guess I can do it to the best of my ability. So, Edith Finch, you just kind of walk in to her old house that the entire family used to live at. The doors are oh gosh, what did they use? They're all closed up.
They're sealed off with what
Yeah.
looks like caulking.
Sealant. Yeah. And so you just end up going back through the back door. You kind of look around a little bit, go through everybody's rooms, and everybody usually has a diary that usually tells a story of them. I think the first one you end up running into is I don't remember her name. The little girl
is Molly.
Is that the little girl?
Yep.
Yeah. And then this one was super weird. I didn't look up anything about this game, and I don't know what I was expecting. But Molly wakes up, she's hungry, and she eats. What did she end up eating?
First you get up and you eat gerbil food.
Gerbil food, that's what it was.
And then you eat toothpaste.
Yeah, you eat the toothpaste, yeah.
And then you debate eating your fish.
But you decide not to.
Yeah, and then you see a bird outside of the window.
You forgot the berry.
Oh, the berries in the bathroom.
The thing that
yeah, the little berries, yeah.
It did the
and
trick.
Then there's that cat there, the bird there, and then somehow you open up the window that's partially locked, and then you turn into a cat, and then you start climbing the trees, chasing this bird. Then you eat the bird, and then you turn into an owl, I think. Yep. Then you eat some rabbits. Then you turn into a shark. Then you eat a seal.
I love the shark. When you turn into a shark, you just tumble down the hill.
Yeah, you're just tumbling down the hill.
It's so bad.
And then you turn into some. Yeah. And then you turn into some sea creature monster thing, and then you eat some people. And then you go through a toilet, and then you end up back in your house, in your room. And then you wake up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we
the
just
monster.
elaborate that the sea creature that you turn into,
It
I don't
kind of
know if
looks like a
it's
squid.
supposed to be, like a squid, like a kraken or what, but you start to climb up, you're on like a ship, and you keep moving the tentacles further and you scoop up people to eat them. I thought that was so cool. Like, I love that. I'm sitting here like, no,
It reminded
just
me of
sneaking
like
in to snatch them up real fast.
I don't know if any of you guys have ever played The Darkness, but it reminds me of that.
Yeah, I did play the Darkness in a way.
Because I think there's one type of ability that lets you like slither around everywhere.
Yeah, I like that one of the sailors is singing,
Yeah, and you just
and
Yeah.
you're like, you can either listen to him or you can be like, listen, man, shut up.
I just
Yeah,
lost him.
you get an
My game
achievement.
also crashed there, like at that guy.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
really?
Yeah, I waited for the song and then waited and then it just crashed.
I also
He
got
just
lost on the boat.
How do you get lost on the boat?
Dude, I tried to go under the little truck and then it wasn't working, so then I thought I had to go like somewhere else and then I got lost.
Did you
Then
tie
it
up like a
eventually let me
pretzel?
go through the truck. Yeah.
I will elaborate on that end point. You end up back in your room coming through like the sewer pipes because you come out of the
Yeah.
toilet and you go underneath your bed, and then as Molly you wake up and it's like you again, and you're writing in the diary and you're like, I can only be quiet for so long, the monster's not gonna wait any longer. And then she goes,
Delicious.
because I will be delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. Like, I was just like, this is spooky, and I love it.
We should also say that everything we cover in this game is how people die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all like this whole game is just death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's
Yeah.
a curse on the family. Only one person survives. Everyone else dies in unusual ways. That's the whole point of the story. She like talks about it while you're playing.
Well,
Yeah.
you like find this out more and more as you read like the family curse.
Right.
And I like how when you're doing these things, the words appear in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like she's talking, like she's narrating, but you're also able to see them right in front of you. I always like when they like kind of project the narrative in front of you.
For sure.
But that's Molly. That is the first interaction you have, and it's like it's very weird. It kind of catches you off guard because you're like, what am I playing?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, we never stated. She was hungry in her bedroom because she got sent to bed with no dinner. That's why she was so hungry in her bedroom.
Pretty sure what killed her is eating mistletoe because mistletoe is poisonous.
Yeah,
Probably.
I assumed something that she ate is what killed her.
Yeah, I would
Probably the
assume it's
people.
the
Also,
berries.
how gross was it to funnel toothpaste?
Oh yeah.
Ugh.
I could never do that. She
No.
just downed that shit.
I feel like I did like a reaction to that. Like I tensed back.
I'm like, ugh, how'd she do that? But I think she eats that berry, and then that killed her.
Yeah.
After Molly, we transition into Edie's and Odin's room. So
Who?
Edie is the great grandma, right?
Mhm.
And
No, Edie's just the
She's
grandma.
just the grandma.
Just grandma.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
And Odin is the grandpa.
Okay,
Mm.
so I will say this. Somehow I ended up beating the game without doing Odin or Rody or whatever you said his name was. Like I
Odin.
never ended up finding his diary.
I also finished it without getting Odin's story.
So like
Oh.
I went back and played it and like found it.
It's just the little flip picture thing.
Yeah, somehow I missed it.
Yeah, it just kind of explains like his backstory, like how he moved his house from England or Europe.
Oh, yeah.
And then he doesn't make it, and the original house is off like it's in the ocean behind the new house.
Yeah.
Also, this house looks like super
This is amazing.
bizarre.
Yeah,
They
it's
had
like,
to keep just adding to it.
yeah.
So it's all like up. It looks like a castle
Kinda, I guess.
because they just keep adding like rooms going up.
Yeah.
Edie and Odin's, there's not a whole lot that happens here. You kind of just figure out like Odin's backstory. That's it, right? You just go through
Yeah.
the newspaper reel thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see like Edie here with like her newlywed husband. They like land. Sam or something, or is it Sam? I can't remember their names.
I was gonna say that's like the hardest thing for me is I don't remember.
I know they have a
endings.
newborn baby at the time. I can't remember who it is. But so you find out that Odin's died, but that's how the house got here. That's how they were trying to leave Europe to break the Finch curse. Is essentially what his thought process was. Edie's like like her room is like just a ton of birds. Like everything is a bird. Then you move in. You go through the closet, which is a secret entrance, and you go into Calvin. This is Calvin and Sam, right?
I believe so. If those are the right names, yes.
They're brothers, and
yeah, the brothers.
You don't find out anything about Sam at this point in time. You just know that they shared a room. And Calvin is obsessed with the idea of flying. So they have a swing set out back, and Calvin is trying to do like a full 360 around the thing, like around the. It's part of a tree, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like he wants to go all the way around like the tree branch.
So as you're doing this, you're kind of learning about his story a little bit, and you're just kind of like swinging, just kicking and pushing, going a little higher at a time, a little bit higher at a time, and then Edie calls for him to come in, like for dinner or whatever, and yeah. So he keeps telling the story about how he wants to fly, how he thinks he's going to get there, and he ends up doing like the 360 around the branch, and then he ends up flying off the cliff that the swing is by.
Yep, he launches too.
He's done for. And that's how little Calvin dies. So not as elaborate of like a second one.
I will say this game, us talking about it doesn't really do it justice because everything's so visually appealing and like tells it like such a strong narrative. Like when you see the room and you see like his like they're both divided. You see like his half as like astronaut stuff, like planes. Like you get like more of a sense of the characters than what we're doing we're not really doing justice to that.
Yeah, and like I said, Calvin's is a weird one because it's all visual.
It is like 30, maybe a minute long once you get into like the memory.
Yeah, it's not too much. You just kind of get an idea of his backstory, and then you end up dying. After Calvin, you move your way up the stairs into Barbara's room, which personally, I think if our friend Tony would have played, this would have probably been his favorite one.
Probably.
That's what I said as soon as I finished it. Remember I told you that?
So
it's like I think Tony would really like that.
Yeah, so I did Calvin. Do you who wants to take on Barbara?
I guess I will. Barbara, you go into her room and it's like well, she has like a picture of herself, right? She's trying to like get over.
Well, she's like she was a kid actress.
Yeah, she was a child star, and she I couldn't decide if she was trying to just get over it, but people wouldn't let her live it down, or she was still wanting to be a child actress. But like in her room, you find like a comic book, and it tells you like this narrative story about like, um, it just like her. I can't. What's her? Was
It's
it her boyfriend?
her boyfriend's there trying to help her
Rick?
get
Or
Rick.
Ricky?
Yeah, he's trying to help her get like her scream back.
Scream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, so he pulls a little prank on her, hides in the basement, which they're not supposed to go down to the basement. Or actually, I'm not sure. That point in the story where they weren't supposed to go down in the basement.
I would say probably not because the key's like hidden.
Oh yeah, it's still in that. So yeah, that's where this part of the story also shows you where like the key is to get into the basement to continue the game, which is cool. But you lead in the basement because you're following a sound. You're looking for your boyfriend, and he's hiding. And he leaves an elaborate trail of like blood, his crutches on the ground because he had like a broken leg or something. And then you pick up the crutch. You can knock over like pool balls. It's very like cell shaded.
Well, you're playing this part as if you were in the comic book,
Yeah.
which was super cool to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you go down there, he pops out, scares you, and you're like, "Oh, Ricky, you bitch!" And like, you basically like gather your stuff up. He goes, and then you go check for your little brother, or do you check on your little brother before all that happened? Can't remember that.
What? I think he fell asleep and then he started like yelling or something.
Yeah, then you go up to your little brother's room,
Yeah.
and then you don't see him when you go in there. I think he's in there.
He
Yeah.
is. His name's Walter.
Walter, yeah. He's in there. He's hiding. While you're in there, some hooked thing. Oh, you hear on the radio something about a hooked like serial killers on the loose.
There's
or
a
the police are
prison
looking
break,
for. Oh, prison break.
and there's like the hook man killer or something. It's something like real
Yeah.
generic.
Yeah, and then he happens to be just behind you. You fight him off. You go through all their secret passages to kind of escape.
Oh my god, you push him off the thing.
Oh, yeah, the banister.
Yeah,
He
and he
falls
falls
onto a
through
table.
yeah, he falls through that coffee table. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. It picks up. You're running away. What is it? Does the story reveal itself like right at the end there? Like, do they do more?
Well, I think the end of this one is
Well, you knock him off.
Go ahead, Dan.
You knock him off the railing. You go downstairs to like, I guess, see if he's still alive. I guess I don't really understand it. But you go downstairs, you check on him, and his body's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's either a knocking or the doorbell keeps ringing. So you go to the front door, and then all the monsters like pop out behind you. We're like, oh, surprise! Like you did
He does
it
a
or
scream.
whatever.
Like she does
Yeah.
her like gets her scream back in that way.
Yeah.
And I mean that's basically it. They're like, she's super happy and like all these monsters are around her, but then at the end of the comic book page it's like the only thing left of Barbara was her ear, and it's presumed that it's Ricky since no one's seen Ricky since like before that night or something.
Yeah, they talk about how they didn't find like him or any evidence of him. So, I guess while we're here, did he kill her?
Don't know.
Because obviously there's not like real monsters. That's not like a thing.
Yeah, did he kill her? Did a prisoner really get out and kill him? Because I don't know what that comic book's like really based on. Because
Right,
it's
I
weird.
wasn't too sure on this one. Did you have
And
any
it just
thoughts on
ends. It
this
just
one?
says like the monsters.
I don't know, honestly.
Yeah,
I
because
never really considered it.
yeah, because it like just kind of ends, and then the narrator of the comic book, which is that like jack-o'-lantern dude,
Mm-hmm.
he just kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, like
Old Jack, is that his name?
something like that. And it's just like, oh, okay. Like, that's the end of the story. And he makes, like, some stupid pun.
Yeah.
Oh, it's something about an ear. I forgot.
Eerily or something.
Yeah. But then right at the end, it shows Walter underneath the bed, and he had witnessed everything. And then you come back out, like you close the comic, and then you're playing as Edith again. And now you can go down to the music box and take the key out because you know.
From the comic book, that's where it was.
Right. And then this is probably my least favorite part of the whole game.
Why?
I did not like the whole Walter thing.
Oh,
I think his story thing was fine. I mean, it's
that's the
super short.
story.
So Walter is essentially, after that happens, he locks himself in the basement, and Edie takes care of him, but it's like a secret, essentially. And he's in like a bomb shelter, kinda.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it.
So you take control of Walter, and every day he wakes up at it's noon, right?
Yep.
Well, he eats
Yeah.
his can of peaches at noon. I don't know if he wakes up.
Yeah.
So every day at noon he opens his can of peaches and he eats it, and you keep doing it like for a few days, and eventually Walter's like, well,
I don't think it's a few days, man.
it's for years, but like
Yeah.
for you only
It's like
do
40
like,
years.
because it
Yeah.
jumps from like the 80s to like the 90s to like 2007 or something.
Mhm.
And but you only play like a few days of it.
Yeah.
And after you do it, he finally goes, "Hey, I've had enough." He's like, "I'm tired of being scared. Like, I'm over this. I don't want to be trapped down here forever. Like, this is the day. The shaking. Oh, there's shaking every day at noon. It's like the whole bunker shakes." And he thinks it's. What does he think it is? A creature?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what he
Um,
thought it was.
but it shakes every day, and then it stops. And he's like, okay, that's weird. And then he goes a little longer, and he's like, oh, it's been X amount of days since there's been a shaking. He's like, I'm tired of this. I think it's gone. It's got bored of waiting for me. He's like, I'm going to leave this bomb shelter. So that day you get up and you go further into the bomb shelter, which leads to like a cave exit.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Because you hit the thing open, right? Don't you like
You break the wall, yeah.
break the
Yeah.
wall open?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so you're basically in like a cave with like railroad tracks.
Yeah, like a tunnel. A
Um,
railroad tunnel.
and you start walking towards the light, and you're like, oh, like he starts talking about how if he lives the next 30 years or the next one week or 1 month, 1 week, one day, he's like, I'd be happy. And you get to the edge of the tunnel, you finally get to see outside, and he gets blasted by a train.
Yeah, because the train
Yeah.
was late that day. That's why there was no rumbling that day.
Yep.
Yeah, how fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was sad, but I like that he was like, oh, I want to take in everything. I'm no longer scared. And it's like, of course. By the
Yeah.
time he drops his guard.
That day, you're like, great. Like, dead. After that, you go back to being Edith, and you go through the cemetery.
Yeah, you go and look out like the telescope thing.
And you
Well,
look at the old house.
You end up following Walter's path, and then at the railroad track, it's like all broken down and like collapsed. But where he died at, there's like a little memorial for him.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
little
there's like a
and
cross.
flowers.
Yeah.
So you do that. You look at the beach. You kind of see like the old house in the distance. You end up working your way through the Finch Cemetery.
Yeah, which they state that of course, their families like started a cemetery before they even built the new house.
Yeah, so weird.
Mm-hmm.
So then you go through the cemetery, you get up to the very top, you look through a telescope, you kind of take like a closer look at the old house. Then you turn around and you do the other half of the cemetery.
Yeah, you like cut back through and veer to like the left, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is the one where like I think your siblings
Yeah, it's like where you like your family, like your mom, and then your siblings like stayed.
are buried, and they kind of like brush over this at this point, kinda.
Mm.
Um, and you end up climbing up like a tree house. And once you get to the top of the tree house, you take a tree branch and go to the top of the garage to make your way to this balcony. But while you're doing this, this is where you find out that Edith is pregnant. I mean, you might have figured it, but like she actually blatantly states it at this moment.
I think also her shadow like showed it a little bit. I can't remember.
Oh, is she like 2 months at that point? Is what she said?
22 weeks,
22
I think,
weeks.
is what
Okay.
she was. Do you remember, Lauren?
Something like that.
Are you like dying in there? You all right?
Probably. I don't know.
But once you get over to the balcony and climb in through the room, you end up in Sam's room. So Edie has to be great grandma.
Yeah, now that you say that, because that's your grandpa.
Sam is Edith's grandma or grandpa.
Yeah. That's your mom, your Dawn instead.
Lauren, do you want to take a shot at Sam's story?
I don't remember which one was his story.
So
From
Sam
being
is like a military guy. He's like really into like guns and the military and hunting and stuff.
Survival.
The Bible.
No, the survival. I don't know
No,
if he
the
was
Bible.
The Bible. Is this the?
It's
Is
the
this
one where you take the pictures.
the pictures?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I didn't feel like the story was super in depth, but basically you're out with. Is it Edith that's out with?
No,
it's Dawn.
It's Edith's mom.
It's her
Dawn.
mom. Okay.
Yeah.
She's out. They go like out in the wilderness or whatever, and he keeps like they keep. Are they switching off taking pictures?
Yeah, he starts taking pictures.
Every time it's like, oh, like you take a picture of him like doing something like, cooking, stuff like that. I don't remember this one as well as everyone else probably, besides the very end.
Essentially it just goes different segments. Like he takes a picture of her like just like at the campgrounds, and then he takes a picture of her like I don't know what he's doing at the time when she takes a picture of him.
What, pissing?
Oh yeah, when he's taking a
Yeah.
piss.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just they alternate back and forth, and then at one point he takes a picture of Dawn as she's looking down the scope of a rifle.
Yeah, to shoot the deer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Which she doesn't really want to do.
right, she says, "Hey, I don't really want to do this." Sam goes, "You don't gotta do anything you don't want to do."
And she pulls the trigger.
She does pull the trigger, and she shoots this deer. And then the next picture is you taking a picture, or you set up the camera so that you and Dawn can hold up the deer and take a picture
Together.
with it because it's her first kill. And so you set a little timer, and then you run up the top of it's like the edge of kind of like a mountain, like a little cliff.
And she's telling you it's still it's suffering.
It's still breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Sam gets over there, and as the camera takes a picture, like right before the camera takes a picture, the deer shoots up and knocks him off. So the picture is like him like falling, which fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's probably like the worst one. But that story's good because it's all about like her bonding with her dad, who's become like a survivalist.
Yeah,
He just never really adjusted.
He's also really into photography, which is why he takes like all the photos.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially, he falls to his death from that. And that's the last photo. But this part's cool. The part that I really like about this is every time you take a photo, Edith's hand moves that photo to look at the next one. So it's like she's actually looking through and telling the story through photographs, which I think was really cool.
I feel like that's something that this game does really well, is to keep reminding you that this is like something that she's looking at or whatever in the real world versus like, oh, it's just a cutscene of us seeing the whole thing. They try to keep you like, keep your mind knowing that.
Right, so this isn't like some like oh, I'm looking at this and now I like jumped into the photo and I was there kind of gimmick.
Or just cut like a flashback. This game just does such a good job at just telling the story. Like visually, it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just keeps you like intertwined because it moves fast. It doesn't really feel like a slow burn.
Yeah, and I don't know if we mentioned this, but every time you do one of these, Edith fills in a picture of that person in like her
draws like a
family tree.
Mm-hmm.
So like as you go, she fills in. You kind of like see names, and you're like, I don't know who that is, but you move like through the family tree. After Sam is Gregory and Gus's room. Gregory's is like one of the saddest things ever.
Yeah.
So Gregory is an infant baby, and
he's like 3, 2 or 3.
Yeah, he's like a toddler. He couldn't be any older than 2 years old.
Yeah. Well, on everything, it always gives like their dates of like birth and then death.
Yeah,
I can't remember if he was a year or not.
So you go in, you find his like crib, and there's divorce papers. So the divorce papers are basically like the parents are like they split because of this. And then you kind of like you get like the image of what took place. You're playing as Gregory, he's taking a bath, and you're kind of playing with toys. It's like the perspective of a child, where everything like is his imagination's taking over. Like the little frog can jump on its own, and there's like little toy guys that are like swimming in the water, and he's like, it's like very like it's rubber a kid. Ducks. Yeah. So as your mom's like, oh, you're about done taking a bath. She walks away, and you start playing with toys, and like more toys are falling in as you do things. And then she comes back and she lets the water out, and then the dad calls, and the dad is narrating this part, which is kind of neat. And he's like, oh, like if I wouldn't have called, like you probably would have still been alive. But so essentially what takes place is your mom goes to answer the phone. Gregory, the little kid, knocks the plug back into the water, and he turns on the faucet, and the water starts filling up in the tub, and then he imagines that he's swimming with his toys.
He imagines that he's the frog.
Oh, that he's the frog.
Yeah.
And he swims with his toys, and there's like seaweed, and it's all like bright and colorful. And he gets over to what the drain essentially is. And you swim down the drain, and then that's how it ends. You find out that Gregory drowned in the bathtub. Which, wow.
Gregory was also 1 year old.
1
1 year old. Yeah, I'm looking at a photo of from the family tree. It says 76 to 77.
Okay.
So a
So
1-year-old
it's
child,
one.
he drowned in the bathtub, causes the parents to get a divorce. Then you move over to Gus, which Gus is really against his. Is it his dad that's remarrying?
I couldn't.
I think
I think,
so.
yeah, I think it's his dad.
Yeah, I
Um,
think so too.
did anyone want to take this one?
So basically, you're Gus, and you're at like the wedding or wedding reception. I'm pretty sure it's a wedding,
I
right?
think it's the wedding.
It's
Yeah.
both.
Okay. Anyways, you're flying a kite, and you're using the kite to kind of like you are hitting the letters and kind of making them be like, oh, like tell the story, which is really weird. And you end up giving your dad the bird because you really don't want to help with anything with the wedding. And somehow there's a storm that ends up coming, and everything starts going flying. The kite starts taking up wind, and you end up going flying with it. Is that what happens?
No, I
No.
think the tent crushes you.
Well,
The
then
tent-
the
Yeah.
tent flips over, knocks over that like totem pole looking thing. That has like all the weird things. You see it down on the beach when you're coming back from like Walter's Path. It's like a bunch of like tiki statue things.
And so those crush you?
Yeah, it falls on you. Like the tent flips up, knocks that thing onto you.
Okay, yeah. This part's pretty short, and it's also told in poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah, by your mom, like Dawn.
Yeah, like everything,
Her poem.
everything just rhymes and it goes together. It's pretty strange.
Also ends on a dark note. We didn't know you were gone till we found you.
Oh, I know, right? Like he was just there for like a while,
Like after everybody else probably evacuated.
right? So that's pretty dark. But just he
Mhm.
was very unhappy with them getting married, and then he lost that child too. Um, After Gus, you go through Dawn's room.
Yeah, and you see like she talks about meeting her dad. Your dad in what, India? Sanjay or Sujay?
So I think it's Is it Sanjay?
I think so.
Yeah, she meets him in India, like, and I can't remember their story. Like, I don't remember why she's there.
I don't know. I should have took
I'll,
notes, but this one
I'll
was
be
like
honest
so
with you. I
short.
have no idea what you guys are talking about.
So,
Your dad, like Edith's dad.
Edith's dad and your mom, Dawn, they meet in India, but I don't remember what the context of it is. But you cut through her room to eventually get to your brother Milton's room.
Which lives in a fucking boat on the house.
Oh.
And you crawl through the window of Milton's room, and he has a pulley system in his room,
Mm-hmm.
which is cool. And you pulley yourself up to the top, which it's more like a lighthouse, kinda. What it reminds me of, but I don't. Is it a boat?
Are you talking about your brother
No,
Lewis?
no,
Because you go through
you're
Lewis first.
No, you go through Milton first.
yeah, you go through Milton's first.
Oh, Milton's is like a lighthouse looking thing, or like a observatory balcony deck thing. I don't know.
Yeah, his is really cool. It's really weird.
So when you get to the top of Milton's room, you find out that he's an artist, and he has a flip book,
Yeah, so good.
and his story is basically told through a flip book, and it kind of shows him like, what's he draw? It's like some kind of mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're flipping through it, he goes through the mirror, and I can't remember this part. Do you remember this one better than me?
I mean, the overview of like the talking is she talks about how Milton was like passionate about the arts because like I think it's either after your dad dies, you guys all move back in with Edith and like take over. Milton, like your grandma, like would push Milton to like draw and stuff. That's why she gave him that area. And at some point, she mentions that he found a secret of the family, and your mom didn't want to know. And whatever he found, he disappeared right after. And ever since then, like your mom has like been super worried about everything.
Yeah. So this is another one. Is the family involved? Is he even dead?
I think he's the only one that's confirmed, like, well, not dead
Because they
because he
just say
doesn't
he's
have like a death.
missing.
They just said he left. He just disappeared.
Right.
Oh
They-
yeah, he's the one that's missing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But the flip book's done
Okay.
really well. It's cool. I like
It's
that
actually a
just-
flip book. It's 100% a flip book. You can control it. You can stop on each page. Somebody made a working flip book in the game.
which is super good. And then after Milton, you go to Lewis's room, which is your other brother. And he's the one that lives in a
Typical
boat.
stoners. Stoner.
And I know Lauren likes this one a lot, so I'm going to let her explain Lewis.
Lewis's story, the one where he works in that like factory or whatever with the
Yeah, and
fish.
the fish.
Yep,
Yeah.
the salmon factory.
So
Or tuna. I don't know what it is.
it is salmon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a salmon one. So basically, you find like, is it his papers from like a psychiatrist?
Yeah, yep.
And that's where you learn the story from him. But he blamed himself after Milton's disappearance. This is like straight from their like wiki thing. But I really liked his room. His room had like a hookah in it. It had like all these posters.
Yeah,
Pretty
the straight up
wild.
stoner's room. Like,
Oh
what
yeah.
you imagine a stoner room to be like now.
They talk
But
about
in a boat on top of a roof.
yeah, they talk about how it still smelled.
Yeah, she said, "Oh, that familiar smell."
Yep.
Yeah, so he works in this factory. Basically, his job is a fish comes to him. He slides it over to the thing to drop down to cut its head off, and then he throws it up ahead of him, like to move on the line, I guess. But eventually, he's just, sick of his everyday, same routine, crazy, not doing anything but that every day. And he starts to daydream. So the more he daydreams, it starts out in like a smaller section on the screen you play, he goes through. In the daydream, it's like super colorful. I don't remember how it starts out.
Well, it's like it originally starts out as like as old of a video game as you could think of. It's flat and you're moving just like a simple thing through a maze.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay.
And then
Also, this whole time you're cutting fish's heads off, and
At the
Right.
same time.
yeah, you're
like
just doing
right
the
stick
job.
is cutting the head, and then you're throwing them into like a trash can, or not trash can, assembly line, and then your left stick's like controlling the daydream.
Right. So then it starts out very basic, and then eventually it starts getting a little more detail, and he starts like the reading starts explaining more how he felt. That in that imaginative world, he could dictate what was going on. Like he felt important, essentially. So he goes on like quest, and he like conquers these towns. And then, as Lauren said, it starts getting like more like colorful and like bright. And as you progressively get further and further through the story, it takes up more and more of the screen. And then there's like that river part. Did that make a difference?
I don't know. I
No?
didn't
When you
think
chose
to
like the
really.
music and stuff, I don't know. I think it just set the tone.
Yeah, I
Because you
think
could
so.
pick like
Yeah.
the king if you were going after a queen or a king, or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yep.
And the music. So by the end of him telling the story, like it talks about how his work considered him to being like the ideal employee. Like he
Even
just
though he stopped talking at work, he forgot to go home from work.
Yeah, your mom couldn't even get him to go home because he was so zoned out.
Yeah.
um so then he gets the part where it's like a full 3D like game in his head essentially, and he's like the king and he's about to get like crown king after conquering all these cities, and he names them like after different things like St.
Louisville.
Louisburg.
Yeah.
um and he's just like in his own world. So he gets to the end, and you walk through the castle door and you kind of transition back into the salmon shop, and you like walk down the corridor and you actually come up behind yourself, and he's literally watching himself do this job, which I thought that was pretty cool.
Hmm.
And then you climb up the belt that you would be putting the fish on, and you go through another door and it's back into like the king's room of your imagination. And there's like, oh, all these people are celebrating you, and they're like, oh, the last thing you got to do is come up here and get the crown put on your head.
Yeah, you like bow your head to get the crown. The whole time you're just looking around. Everybody's clapping, they're cheering for you. It's like the life he's always wanted. It's like people to.
Well, I think even in his dream, he knowingly puts his head in that like guillotine.
Yeah,
So he
yeah,
bends
he
his
does.
head down to put the crown on, and the guillotine comes down, and that's how it ends.
Yeah,
Yep.
like is
So
it implied that like he like happened at work or just died?
I think this is a suicide, man.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
'cause he
sure it's
wanted
a
to be in the
suicide.
world. Yeah, but I didn't know if it happened like there at the line. He was just like, oh yeah, just gonna.
I would assume so,
I thought so with the whole guillotine kind of thing.
because it's like the same thing that cuts the fish's head off.
Like, yeah.
Um, but fuck, man, this one like really caught me. I was like, whoa, like I found myself like really in depth with the story, and I was like really into it at that point.
That one tells it very well because it makes you do two things at once.
Which can I
feel
say
For
is
sure.
just kind of annoying to try to do, man. I couldn't keep focus on both things.
oh,
At
You
one
had a
point, there
hard
was
time
like
with
5
that?
fish laying there, and I was like, ooh,
I had to wait for fish.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, same.
no.
Dan just can't
Wow.
multitask apparently.
Yeah, I can't focus on 2 things.
But yeah, this is like I didn't expect it to be a suicide.
Me neither.
But it kind of gets you thinking about like everything else leading up to that point, where it's like, is it all suicide?
Like all of them?
I mean, obviously not like Sam's, because like his was like a deer. But like some
I
of
wouldn't-
these like make more
I wouldn't-
sense if it's a suicide.
I wouldn't think Walter's would necessarily be a suicide. It was just bad timing.
Yeah, I mean it's just
I
it's
think
open.
they might. I think. Let's keep going before I say what I think.
Okay. After you finish Lewis's room, you go up a staircase and then a ladder into Edith's room, so your own room. And she's like a writer, essentially. She likes to write things, is what I got from that.
Like journaling and stuff.
Yeah. And so you pick up a book and you start reading. It's basically your journal from when you were a kid before you left the house, explaining like the last night that you were there. and you're having dinner with Edie and your mom. And then they get into a fight, and you said, "Hey, can I please be excused?" And your mom's like, "Yeah, go ahead." And you sneak into the library, and you start reading Edie's story.
That starts out with your grandma says, because your mom's trying to get your grandma to go into a nursing home at the table, and your grandma's like, "I have a present for you in whatever space," like knowing, like hinting at the hidden door that you know about. And then your mom's like, "Yeah, we gotta go." And then your grandma's like, "All right, here we go. We're gonna argue," as like she leaves. And then that's when you go into that like library thing.
Oh, okay. And then you find, like I said, you go in there, and she leaves you like a book about her story.
Well, it's the whole family story. It's like the start of like because she mentions every Finch is in that library somewhere. Like
Oh, okay.
like their story is like there in that library somewhere.
But once you start reading the book, you like it explains how Edie looked at that house every single day, and then there was an earthquake off the coast,
Mm-hmm.
and it caused the tide to be really low, and she's able to walk out there. So she heads out to the house, and eventually you get there, and like everything's like there's like a desk and like a table, and you come to like a gate, and you open the gate. I don't
Oh,
remember how this ends
okay.
after that.
You go through the house. I can't remember what she says. Like she says something about like the family and like how like some of the house, but then your mom interrupts it as she's like telling like you're reading something like supposed to be like I got the feel of meaningful, like
Like The Secret.
yeah, or something about like something of more in depth, and then your mom interrupts. You guys get in a struggle. She rips
Rips
half the
it,
journal. You rip half. Then you leave that night, and your grandma stays there
and
because your mom's like, "I'll just have it. People pick you up in the morning."
then she dies.
Yeah, that night.
Um, and then essentially, as you're leaving, you start talking as yourself again, and she starts explaining how she doesn't want this. Like she wants to be able to tell these stories to her child,
Mm.
but she's like, if you're reading this, however, like I know that that's not a thing, and I assume that this is a birth canal. Like you're playing
Yes.
basically the
Yeah.
baby coming out, and
Yeah.
uh, I think that she dies during childbirth, but it never like
You
blatantly
you
says
mi-
it.
you missed the part where on the way there it flashes to her mom getting sick like 4 years after they left that night or something. And her mom like wishing like she knew more, like told her more about the family.
Oh, okay. I skipped over that part.
Hmm.
But then she goes into like childbirth. Then I think you die while giving birth to this child.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it pans out like after there's a bright white light, and it shows
Your
your
child.
son at your
Yeah.
like at the house, but like at your grave, leaving you flowers.
Hmm.
And that's it, right? That's the ending.
Yeah. And you were
Yeah.
playing as the son when you first got there as well. When you were on the boat thing. Because he had flowers in the journal.
Oh, I didn't even piece that together.
Me
Yeah.
neither.
I don't remember a boat.
At the very beginning, before you even get to the house.
Here, before you even get to the woods, there's like a little cutscene of like you looking down with like light white flowers in a journal.
Yeah, totally don't remember that.
And of course you don't.
I just didn't piece it together, but that makes sense actually, because everything is essentially like a story being told to you.
Hmm.
Um,
And from her perspective.
right. So that is the end of Edith Finch. We kind of talked about the story pretty like in depth. We talked about the gameplay. Everything's just kind of like a walking simulator in the aspect of like you don't do a whole bunch. Kind of like hit a button to interact with stuff usually.
Mhm.
And you kind of just move around. So what about art and music?
Art's fantastic. I mean, the music I don't really remember. Like nothing's standing out to me. Like it fit most of it fit all the atmospheres because each story had a different tone. Uh, like still always somber, but like different. Um, the house design was probably my favorite thing.
Yeah, the house is crazy looking, and I think graphically it looks good. I noticed that right away when you're walking through the
Mhm.
woods.
Yeah, I think it looks good. Like like the character and like the charm there. Like I, this game is best. Like listening to us talk is fine, but you should go and play it, even if you know the story. Like at least you'll be able to tie together a little bit of the pieces.
Right. I knew kind of what was going on before I played this,
Me too.
and I think playing it has really opened my eyes to what it actually is and how good it is.
Yeah, agreed. I knew like most of the plot points and the ending before going through. Still a fantastic story. I'm happy I played through it. Like and got to experience how they wanted to tell the story.
Yeah. What do you think, Lauren? Dan?
I mean, you guys kind of hit it on the head. Like the graphics and the art is pretty good. I liked. I shouldn't say all of them, but you know the difference between Lewis's story and whose story, Barbara's story. The art style changed for those, at least for like the comic book, and then Lewis's like
Like 3D
daydreaming.
render,
Oh yeah,
video
kind of
game esque.
nice to not be the same type of thing the entire time. Like it was cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it changes it up enough. That it's like it wants to try something new, so it just does.
Oh yeah.
What about you, Lauren? Anything about art or music?
Um, I mean, I know me and you have talked about it. This game, like, exceeded my expectations of it. And, like you guys were saying, like, the art style changing up for different kinds of storytelling blew me away. It made the game, like, for the beginning of it, I'm like, man, if all I'm doing is walking around this house retelling these stories, it might get a little tedious. But they always change it in a way that makes you like interested, if that makes sense. They're not like, oh hey, we're just gonna show you, like I said, a cutscene or like a flashback or whatever of what happened. They always have like a unique storytelling way of showing you what happened without being like, hey, that dude killed himself or that baby drowned. It was like a
Kind of
better way of
open.
telling it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of all open to like your precipitate or like
for
however
sure.
you like perceive it.
And I really like that you walked around the house and you kind of like you walked around to experience it yourself. You weren't like, "Oh, now go into this room. This is where you find this book. This is where you find." It's like you kind of just explored and found stories, and
Yeah, I
art
mean
was super good. The
it
music fit it. Nothing that was like, "Oh my god, I'd wanna download this soundtrack," but it fit the stories really well.
I'd agree with
yeah,
that.
it fit like everything just fit how they wanted to do like a linear story. Like there was like you could go and do like any room or whatever, but like you were always going to be on the right path even if you explored.
For sure.
I
I
like
got
that.
lost. Oh.
I like that in the house you can go immediately to the next story. But if you just walked around and looked at the walls and the pictures and like the things it took, like that each room gave, it made it a better experience.
I agree.
And if you rush through it, you still get a good, solid story. But if you actually look around and take your time, like there's a lot that you see. Like you see, like family photos and like what type of books they were reading or what they're into or whatever. And I think that brought it to life more than just the story if you were to just run through the story.
For sure.
Um, so how about time to complete? About how long did it take you guys to finish this?
Mine was roughly like an hour 15, something like that. It was pretty short.
I think I was 2 hours.
Mine was also around 2 hours.
I think mine was around 2. I'm not too sure. I feel like that sounds about right.
At one point, I know Lauren's time got screwed up because I called her.
Yeah, he called me, so all I did was pause the game. So obviously Steam was still counting it while I was on the phone with Corey for like his 30-minute drive home.
Yeah.
So I was just sitting there.
Um,
Well, I had my game crash because I think it says like an hour 45 or 2 hours, but it's like it crashed when I was like in that Molly part after I explored like a lot in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
so, with that being said, it's a pretty short game. We're coming to the end of the episode, and I always like to ask a question relating to each game that we play. So, my question for What Remains of Edith Finch is: do you feel like the curse is real, or is it just a way for them to deal with their grief?
I feel like there has to be some type of curse. Like, not every single person should just be this unlucky.
I would agree with that. I feel like there's no way, there's no outside, like,
Force.
power, force, whatever you want to use, that every single person in the family ends up dying in a unusual way, except for one person.
Oh, I mean, a little both. I mean, most of the things that like if you realize every story, they're all kind of caused by themselves. Like not knowingly. Like Walter walking out on the tracks, he didn't know the train wasn't gonna or was running late that day. For the little kid ignoring everybody out of spite, playing with his kite, and then getting crushed by like tiki torches,
It's just a kind
or
of
like yeah, everything's just kind of done like everything's almost done to themselves, but in a different way. Like
and I don't necessarily say it's a curse because like in Molly's case, it's a
oh,
child
she
eating something that she's not supposed to eat.
yeah, she ate mistletoe, which is poisonous. And then like it's just it all comes down to that stuff. But I mean, a curse is probably the better way to look at the grief, like a better way to look at it if you think of all this stuff that's happened to your family. But they always let that curse get too much of them. From what it sounds like, at the end they were kind of hinting at that, like you should just live no matter what, and not worry about it.
Well, my thought process is kind of the idea of like if you think you're going to have a bad day, you typically have a bad day.
Yep.
Just don't have a bad day.
So
Just go to
Yeah.
bed.
yeah, just go to bed. So like I don't know if like that has any effect to it because you believe in something so much that it ends up happening. And some of it is just like Gregory drowning in a bathtub. Like that can happen to any child if it's left alone in the water.
A lot of it's just unfortunate circumstances.
Right. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's a curse, but to kind of like bottle it up into one thing, I guess saying it's a curse is the easiest way.
But
For
just
sure.
like, there's no way you can have that many like unfortunate accidents, like to one family.
I agree. But then again, I believe in things like karma and stuff like that, so.
All right. So before we kind of move into the end of the episode, is there anything else you want to talk about for What Remains of Edith Finch?
Play
Nah,
it.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
play
play
it.
it. Yeah, my I guess
Well,
are we doing
that's the next
recommendations?
section. Is
Okay.
like, so each episode we go around and we always like to see if we would recommend the game and why or why not. So starting with Dan, would you recommend this game and why?
So I would, only in the aspect that it was free with Game Pass. I don't know how much this game costs, but if it was like 20, I don't know. Like it's a good storytelling game, but that's all there is to it, is just the story elements of it, which is fine and all. But $20, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. You have to find that middle ground for yourself if you really want to go through it for how much it is. If you have Game Pass, yeah, go ahead and play it. It's enjoyable.
Lauren?
I have a rebuttal for Dan's statement.
Oh god.
I have issues with price. However, I also think of it in the aspect of like, you'd be willing to pay over $10 to go see a movie, right? You'd be willing to pay $20 to pay for you and somebody else to go see a movie for an hour, hour and a half. I mean, $20 ain't that bad. But I would definitely recommend it. I know, like Dan said, it was free on Game Pass. You catch it on a Steam sale. I bought it for like $4.
Same.
Totally worth $4. I mean, it's probably, out of the story-driven games that I've played, it's definitely in the top. Just the way they tell it. There's a good like foundation. The story's never like bland or boring. I think it's told really well. So I would recommend it.
Tonsa?
I'll 100% recommend the game. I mean, there's not. I have a bad track record on this because I can almost recommend almost everything. Because I think of it for what it is, but I bought it for $3. I definitely got my money's worth. I even knew about it. Like I was kind of struggling going in because I already knew like about the game and how it ends and parts of it. And I still went in and loved it. I don't think we did a justice at all to this one. We're very like a bit rambly and trying to like teeter between like telling the story and seeing it come to life is way different. I think they nailed it. I think they told the story in a super unique way that everybody should experience. So I recommend it.
I also recommend it. I just want to point out the fact that if you were to try to buy this physical, it's like $100.
I was gonna bring that up. I don't think it's worth it to buy it physical.
Yeah, no.
To go on Dan's point of price, because
Steam
$100
sale.
for like an hour and a half game is wild.
That's a lot of
Yes.
money.
I recommend just hitting a Steam sale. It's not nothing you would miss out if you don't play. But if you're looking for something that's deeper than just like, Minecraft or something that kills time for like a little bit, like an hour or so, I think it's perfect. And I paid $3 for it or $5, something like that.
I 100% recommend it. I think my biggest takeaway is that the story is written for you, and you can kind of interpret it the way that you want it. Because what I see a story taking place and how it pans out, somebody else could see slightly different. So you might watch the game with Lewis, and I think it's about suicide, which it kind of leans that way, but someone else might have a different perspective of what was going on. So I kind of like that, but it does like give you like just the straight story, and it's done really well. I'm a sucker for story games, so I would definitely recommend it. I had a lot of fun today talking about What Remains of Edith Finch on NLGC, but before we go, we wanted to share where you can find us online. First, we have a YouTube channel called Nerdlag where we're uploading some great content, so make sure to subscribe for the latest videos. We have a Facebook page at Nerdlag Game Club. Make sure you like that page so you can get all the latest news about the podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at Nerdlag Game Club, where we share some of the latest gaming news that we find interesting and amazing. And lastly, we have a Discord at Nerdlag, where you can talk to us in voice chat and even join in some of the games we're playing. So if you have any interest in that, ask us for an invite. We want to thank everyone that tuned in for this episode, and if you enjoyed, make sure you share it with your friends and follow us on Spotify. It really helps us out. back to the episode.
What did you guys? Did everyone play it on PC on Steam?
I didn't play on Steam. I played on Game Pass.
Oh, you played it on Game Pass.
On the computer.
On the computer, yeah.
Yeah, I played it on the computer as well.
Am I the only one that had a crash?
Yeah, I didn't have any issues.
I didn't have any either.
Weird.
Typically, we would do a final credits section, but this episode is already really long, so we're going to skip that this time around. I had fun with this episode, but I think it is time for us to install the next game and get ready for the next episode. So thank everyone for listening, and we'll see you for the next one.
So yeah.
Bye.
Bye.